Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Norwenglish Knitter Knitting Podcast. My name is Lizzy and I'm coming to you from Bergen, Norway, although I'm originally from Surrey in the UK. If you've never seen a knitting podcast before, it's essentially a knitting show and tell where I get to show off things I've been working on, things I've finished, and just generally chat about all things knitting. I'm not sure how often I'm going to record the podcast because I don't want to put pressure on myself to finish things quickly or, try and create content for the podcast, so I'm just going to record as and when I have things to show. You can find me on Ravelry as LizzyHut94 and on Instagram as the Norwenglish Knitter. I'll be putting the show notes for everything that I talk about in the description box below and also on Ravelry. I've created a group called the Norwenglish Knitter Podcast, so I'll be putting some threads on there. And if you want to come over and say hello, that would be wonderful. So let's get on to the knitting content. If you see me looking down, it's because I've got my notes with me. So I haven't been knitting for very long. I'd say about 1.5 to 2 years that I've been knitting more. I think I started knitting when I was maybe 11 or 12. I started with a scarf, as most people do, with big chunky needles and big yarn, and I taught myself how to cast on and do a basic knit stitch and purl, and I think that was about it, and I don't think I ever finished the scarf. And then about 6 years ago, my mum started a cardigan, and I thought that it looked really nice, and I thought, well, I got a little bit inspired, and I thought, well, maybe I could do that. So I was actually going to knit the same cardigan as her, but in a different colour. And I started, and I got through quite a lot of it, and then I got to a part in the pattern where I just didn't know what I was doing and I could not figure it out, and the knitting just sat there and I never finished it. And since then I've moved house a couple of times and the project has disappeared off the face of the earth. I don't know where it is and maybe that's for the best. So I'm going to show things that I've finished in the past couple of years. I'm not going to show everything in this episode because it would probably take a very long time to go through it, but I'm going to start with the kind of garments that I've finished. So the first thing that I ever finished, so I'm counting it as the first thing I ever knit, was a sweater for my husband. He really wanted an outdoor sweater, kind of colourwork style, and really rustic wool. Because we live in Norway, we get quite cold weather, and his family has a cabin in the mountains, so this kind of sweater works really well. So I'll hold it up for you. Let's see, this side is the front. So I hope you can see. This is the Neville Sweater by Drops Design, and it uses Drops Karisma superwash in the colour anthracite, which is this grey, and the off-white. And it's a DK weight yarn, and I used needles 4mm for the main part of the sweater and 3.25mm needles for the ribbing. I'm not sure which size I knit because I didn't keep notes. I think either large or extra large. I actually knit this as a surprise for my husband, and it was a Christmas present. So I had to guess the size, which looking back was probably a really bad idea, but somehow it worked out and it fits. I tried to look at sweaters that he already had and compare, so I kind of measured and compared the sizing. So luckily it worked out okay. When I originally finished this sweater, it had quite a long, kind of like a turtleneck, and I was very new to knitting, so I just knit this sweater to a T, followed the instructions, and I did not, I didn't change anything because I wouldn't know how. So my husband really loves the sweater. When he was wearing it, the turtleneck was just too kind of constricting on him, and it wasn't comfortable for him to wear. And I noticed that he wasn't wearing the jumper very much. So it took me a couple of years, but I've finally changed the neckline. So I just kind of ripped back and reworked the ribbing, and I just did about an inch or so of ribbing, and he loves it, and he wears it quite a lot now. I think that's all I've got to say about that, really. It was the first sweater I ever made, and I'm quite proud of it. I'm not sure why I chose colourwork. That's my first sweater. That's just me. I don't do things in half. But yeah, I think it worked out really well. It's not perfect. I'm sure I could knit it better now, but it's good. Yeah, I'm happy with it. So that's the first one. The second thing I made after that one was I thought I would make a sweater for myself. So this is another drops design. You might see a bit of a theme here. I have since learnt that drops design is maybe a bit controversial, so we say. They steal other designers' ideas and things like that. So since learning that, I've not really been using them. But you know, when I first started, I was a complete newbie and I knew nothing about knitting. So I just went with what I found. Now this one is called Ferry Cross by Drops Design, and I really like it, but it doesn't fit me. So this was a very hard lesson for me to learn, and I'm sure that all knitters learn this lesson at some point. I had never heard about swatching, did not know the importance of swatching. I just thought that, you know, you get the needles that it says in the pattern and you knit it and it will fit. I was wrong. So, my mum actually bought me this yarn for Christmas or my birthday. And I'd asked for this yarn because I wanted to make this sweater. And I looked at the sizing and I chose size medium. And it was way too small. So I ripped it all out, the whole thing, and I started again. And I thought, okay, well, at this point I knew that my gauge was off because I'd Googled it. But I thought, well, surely if I just knit 2 sizes up, then it won't matter and it will fit me. So I did that, and it still doesn't fit. So here it is. I haven't done anything with it because it pains me. It's just been sat on in my dresser, and I haven't worn it. So I don't really know what to do, whether to frog it again and do it properly this time, do a swatch and work it all out, because I do really like the design. It's a waste of yarn to not wear it, or I could gift it to someone, but I don't know who I would gift it to, because this was my second colourwork sweater, and for some reason, although the one I knit for my husband was fine, this one is just really tight and restrictive where the colourwork is, and I think it's because I've used more than 2 colours, and I didn't know that perhaps I needed to go up a needle size. So yeah, this was knit in Drops Alpaca. It is so soft, like it's so lovely. I would definitely knit with this again, and I really love the colours. So this uses quite a few colours. The main colour is light grey, and then you have this off-white colour up here. You've got a medium grey, black obviously, and this light grey pearl in the middle here. It's using 3 and 2.5 millimeter needles. So if you want to give it a go, definitely swatch. That's my advice. Okay. The next thing that I want to show you is something I really, really love. So I knit this, which I hope is going to come up well on camera. This is the back, and this is the front. This is the Hitofude Cardigan by, let's see, Hiroko Fukatsu. I hope I'm not destroying that name. And I knit this out of Drops Baby Alpaca silk, and oh my goodness, it's just so lovely. I love this yarn. It's just so soft and it was amazing to work with. It might also have something to do with the fact that I got the Chalgu interchangeable needles for Christmas, and they were also a delight to work with. So that in combination with this yarn, and it was just, yeah, a joy to knit. It's really interesting construction. So you actually start with the sleeves and you knit them as a flat piece, and then you use 3 needle bind off to make the sleeves, and then you kind of work this edge here, and then you go down and you do some increases, and it creates this nice shape at the front down the sides. When I'm holding this up, it looks really small, and that's because I haven't blocked it yet. I know that when I block it, the lace will stretch out a bit more, and it's a really nice lace pattern. So I need to block that soon because the weather is starting to warm up, and I would really, really like to wear this. The sleeves come down to about here, so that's just perfect for springtime, really. But I don't have any blocking mats or anything, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to block it. So if anyone has any tips, I would be very grateful. Let's see, I knit this in 3.5 millimeter needles, and it was size medium. Now this one is the first thing that I ever swatched, and it fits, so I'm very happy about that. And I used just under 5 skeins of this yarn that looks like this. So it's a fingering weight yarn. And one thing that I really love about the Drops yarn is that it's really affordable. Quite a lot of the knitting podcasts that I watch, they use all this really, really lovely hand-dyed yarn or really expensive yarn, which is great. Like, you know, they can do what they want, but I have to knit on a budget, and so I really like things like this. I think they're a really good option, and I don't think they are talked about enough. So if you're looking for, you know, good quality and affordable yarns, I do think Drops have really good ones. So 1 skein of this was £4.10, and because I got 5 skeins, that's essentially around £20 for this cardigan, which I just think is so great. If you compare that to things that you would buy in a shop, I think it's really great and really affordable. So that's all I have to say about that one. Oh, and the colourway that I used is called Powder. Okay, the last finished object that I have is perhaps my favourite. This one I'll hold up for you. This is the Favo Sweater by Fibre Tales, who also has a knitting podcast if you want to check that out. And oh, it's just so amazing. I don't know where to start with this. I've made it out of Drops Air in the colourway Wheat. In her version, she holds, I think, an Aran weight, worsted weight yarn with mohair. I decided to do mine without mohair because I wanted it to be a bit more affordable, and also I wanted it to be something that I could wear in the springtime. So I knit this on 6mm needles. It's got this beautiful kind of cabled and textured pattern on the front here with honeycomb brioche on the sides, and on the back it's got honeycomb brioche on either side and just stockinette, reverse stockinette stitch in the middle. I did do some modifications to this sweater. So the way that she gets you to knit it is you knit the front and the back piece separately and you seam them together, and then you do the sleeves separately and seam those on as well. I started doing the front piece and I messed up. I messed up some of the honeycomb brioche. I'd never done it before and it was a pain to try to fix it, so I thought I would just rip out the whole thing and start again. And because I was doing that, I actually decided to change the construction slightly. So what I did was I did a provisional cast on, and I actually knit, so you can see there's kind of 3 panels on the front here, and I knit these separately, and the reason I did that is to try and get more of a straight hem at the bottom. So because the honeycomb brioche is worked very differently to the regular knitting, it means that it's a lot shorter in height than the regular knitting, and you get this kind of dropped hem, and I wanted it to be a bit straighter. So I knit the honeycomb brioche sections separately and then used mattress stitch to seam it together. So I knit the front piece in 3 pieces and the back piece in 3 pieces. And then when I'd seamed those together, I picked up the stitches from the provisional cast on at the bottom and worked the ribbing in the round. And then I started the sleeves, well, I finished the sleeves and I was going to attach them, and I tried, I think, about 5 times to attach a sleeve and it just was not working. I think that's just me because I'm a beginner knitter, and there's so many techniques in this sweater that it was my first time doing. For example, the cabling, the brioche, the mattress stitch seaming. There was a lot of things that I hadn't done before. And when I attached the sleeve, it was really too tight. Like, everything else was fine, but where I'd attached it was really tight. And so I decided to make it short-sleeved. So I just picked up stitches around here and knit some ribbing, and I'm actually really glad that happened because I think I prefer it short-sleeved. It's really, really lovely shaping, and because of the thickness it is warm, but without the sleeves means that it's not too warm, and it's actually perfect on kind of a spring day where it's slightly cool but not that cold. So I'm really, really happy with it. Here are said sleeves. So I'm going to have to frog these and find something else to do with it. I think I used about 5 skeins of the Drops Air, and they are £4.60 each, so again, quite an affordable garment, under £30, especially if you already have the knitting needles and things that you need. That makes it even better. So I would highly recommend this. It is supposed to be cropped, but on me it's not that cropped because my torso is quite short, but I actually really like it that way. And yeah, you can make any modifications that you want. That is the best thing about knitting, is that you can make things kind of custom designed to you, to your body shape, the way that you like them. And it takes time to learn how to do that, but I haven't been knitting that long and I think I'm starting to pick things up a little bit. So, knit the Favo sweater because it was amazing and I'm wearing it to death. Okay, so my camera stopped recording, but I'm back. So I've finished talking about all my finished objects, and next is works in progress. So I have, I think, 3 things to talk about. The first one is this one here. Oh, yarn everywhere. And this is the Sunday Sweater by PetiteKnit, which is a very well-known pattern. A lot of people have knit this, and for good reason. It's a really lovely pattern, and I think it suits a lot of people. And here we are. Now first, can we just take a moment for this colour? I mean, I just love this colour. It's one of my favourite colours, this kind of like burnt orange. Oh, yeah, I love it. Now, the original pattern uses an Aran weight yarn held together with a lace weight, and uses 5 and 6mm needles. And I'd been looking at this pattern for a really long time and I wasn't sure what to knit it with. And then I was in one of my local shops called Europrice here in Norway, and I found this yarn and I just knew I had to knit something with it. So I bought a couple of skeins and I brought it home, and I thought I would try and swatch for this sweater. And I thought, well, whatever it swatches as, I can make it work. So I'm actually holding 2 strands of that colour together. So I think it's like a DK weight maybe. It doesn't actually say, when you buy yarns here in Norway, they don't say what weight they are, they just say what needle size they recommend you use with it. So this one is called Trysil blowgarn, and it's in the colour 158. So if you are in a country where they have Europrice, I don't know if there's anywhere else that has Europrice other than Norway, but you might be able to find this one. And they've got lots of different colours. But it's a really, really interesting colour. It's kind of got like a black thread in the middle and then the burnt orange around the outside. So it gives quite a nice like depth to it when you knit it up. And then I'm also holding a silk mohair with it. It's my first time using silk mohair and I really like it. It's really, really soft. And yeah. So this one is the Blowgarn Kidsilk Erle? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's a Norwegian yarn and it's the colour 9034. It's this really, really lovely orange. I really love this colour. It's quite an expensive yarn and I wish that I had like researched a bit more before starting this sweater. I'm the kind of person that when I want to do something I just kind of jump in and just go for it. And I went to my local yarn shop and saw this and I just had to knit with it. So I think it's like £15 for 50 gram skein, and that is quite pricey for me anyway. So I'm definitely not going to be buying ones like this again, maybe sometimes, but there are more affordable options out there. And if you look online you can find some really good ones. I just really like going into my local yarn store because then I can see and I can touch and feel all of the yarns, and I think something's a lot nicer about that than shopping online, because sometimes the colour is slightly different to what it comes as, or you know, you just can't see and feel the yarn that you're buying, and that makes a huge difference. So I don't regret getting this at all. So yeah, I'm holding 3 strands together and I've gotten quite far. So I've done most of the body and I've started a sleeve. It's got quite nice, like very flared sleeves, which will be interesting. It's different to anything I've got in my wardrobe. I stopped doing the body and started on the sleeves because I wanted to be able to try it on and figure out what length I want it. As I mentioned before, my torso is a bit shorter than average, so it'll be nice that I can customise that. So if you haven't knit the Sunday Sweater pattern, I would really recommend it. It's a very simple pattern, you know, even if this was your first sweater, if you know how to cast on, you know how to knit and purl, and you know how to do a couple of increased stitches, that's essentially all you need, really. I can't think of anything else that you would need. And you know, you can always look for videos on YouTube for different techniques, and you can ask people. There are a lot of people that have knit this sweater, so I would give it a go. So let's pop that down there. The other thing to say is that I'm using for that one 6 and 6.5mm needles. So holding those 3 strands together, I got 16 stitches per 10 centimetres instead of the 14 that's called for in the pattern. So I'm knitting a size slightly larger to accommodate for that. So I'm knitting the extra large, and I really hope that it fits because I really love it. The next one I'm working on is the Sunday cardigan by PetiteKnit. So the reason I haven't finished that sweater that I just showed you is because I ran out of yarn. Like I said before, I knit on a budget, and I can't always afford to buy a sweater quantity of yarn in one go. So I just bought a couple of skeins and started with that, and then I just buy the yarn as I need it and as I can afford it. Obviously that's using commercial yarn that I know is not going to go anywhere, because that would be a big disappointment if you'd finish like 3/4 of your garment and then they stop selling the yarn. So check that before you start. This one's being kept in my Alpaca project bag that I got for my birthday from my brother, and I love it. And this one, oh, I love this colour. Very different to the Sunday sweater. This one is just a gorgeous green with, it's very tonal. It's got kind of darker and lighter bits in it. And this is using Dala Alpaca Magic in the colour, let's see, 313, and that's this one here. It's a really interesting yarn. I don't really know how it's made, but it's very fluffy and stretchy as well. And you can see that this is quite a bright light green, and I'm holding it together with this Dala Kidsilk Erle one again, which is 9024. I actually got this one on sale. It was 30% off, so I was quite happy about that. So I think I bought 4 or 5 skeins, so I should have enough of this for this sweater cardigan. When I hold these together, it kind of tones down the brightness of the green, which I really like. So that's, I think, quite a good way of changing your yarns, is, you know, holding a mohair with it can actually really change the colour of it and give it a bit more depth. So this is the top here, and you can see I haven't really knit very much of it yet. Again, I ran out of yarn and I haven't bought any more yet. I would really like to, because I think I'm going to wear this a lot when I finish it. I think I get a bit more wear out of cardigans than I do sweaters, because my body does not really regulate its own temperature very well, and when I wear sweaters I can be too hot. If I don't have a sweater on, I can be too cold, but with a cardigan it's kind of that happy medium, because you can have it open. And I'm imagining some kind of big wooden buttons on this one. I think would be really cool. So I am actually using the mohair edition pattern. Let me pop this down, which gets you to hold 3 strands of mohair together, but I'm holding these 2 strands together, and I'm using 6.5mm needles, and again I got 16 stitches instead of 14 per 10 centimetres, so I'm knitting the size large. Normally I'd be around a medium or a large, so I'm knitting the large and hoping that it's going to fit. So the next thing I have is the last work in progress that I have, and it's the Teroldego Shawl by Caitlin Hunter, which is a really, really lovely shawl. This is my first shawl that I'm knitting, and I'll show you where I'm at so far. So it's using the Drops Alpaca, so the same one as I used for my Ferry Cross jumper, and I'm using 3 colours. So got this really beautiful burgundy colour, which is one of my favourite colours, and I'm holding it together with this kind of light brown colour, and then I've got an even lighter kind of beige colour in here, which I've run out of. But this is what it looks like so far, and it's got this really pretty lace pattern here and some colour work, which I went up a needle size for, so it, it fits with the gauge of the other parts. And yeah, I'm really liking it so far. The thing I like about knitting this shawl, and I'm sure it's similar to other shawls, is it's very easy to memorise, and it's kind of like TV knitting. You can watch TV while you're knitting, you can chat with people while you're knitting because you know what you're doing. It's just repeated, apart from the colour work and the lace patterns where you might need to check back, but with the stripes it's very much repeated, and that's quite nice. Now I've gotten quite far with this with only 3 skeins of yarn, so I had 1 skein of each colour. So I think this is going to be quite an affordable project, again because I'm using the drops yarn. It's so soft, it's going to be really warm, and I think it will be good in kind of all seasons depending on how you wear it and what you wear it with. So I think that's quite good. Let's see, oh, the colours that I'm using. This one is maroon mix, then we have light camel mix, and the lightest colour I think is the light beige mix. And I'm knitting this on 3.5mm needles. I actually hit gauge for this one. First time that's happened, but I'm quite happy about that, so I'm knitting it exactly as it says, which doesn't really matter because it's a shawl, so yeah, but you've got to take the small wins where you get them. So that's the last thing I have. I do have one more thing on the needles at the moment, but I'm going to probably show that next time, and it will probably be a finished object. I have quite a lot of socks that I've been working on, and I didn't want to show them in this episode because I didn't want it to be too long, but I'll go through that next time. I'm still trying to find a way of knitting my socks that is like perfect. I think when you knit socks it takes time to really learn how to knit them for your own feet and kind of customise them. I'm quite fussy with my socks as well, so that probably doesn't help, but yeah, we can talk about that next time. So I think that's everything I have to talk about today. I would love it if you would like to leave a comment on this video and say hello, maybe tell me what you're working on or what you're hoping to work on. If you have any more affordable yarns, I think we should, you know, help people out with that. If you have any good affordable yarns that you've used and you'd recommend, please put that below. And like I said, I'll be starting a Ravelry thread, so if you want to come and say hello on there, that would be lovely too. You could post some pictures of what you're working on, I would love to see that. And I hope to see you next time.